This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. I am very honored to be with Jennifer Fondrevay, best-selling author of Now What? A Survivor's Guide for Thriving Through Mergers and Acquisitions, and the founder and owner of Day1 Ready. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you. And you nailed it. You nailed my last name. So impressed.
Well, that's why we talk, that. So first, I just want to get the real basics about Day1 Ready. And then I want to get your story a bit. And then we're gonna dig deep.
Okay.
So just, to give people a little context, what is Day1 Ready? What do you guys do? The 2-minute Cliff's Notes version.
You bet.
My assumption is Day1 Ready is a very, the name is pretty important to summarizing what you do.
It is. So as you and I talked about, my background's in marketing. And so I'm very particular about the words and descriptions and branding. And so for me, key to launching my business was having a company name that articulated very quickly my philosophy. So Day1 Ready is intentionally named that way because I felt that too often in mergers and acquisitions, buyers, sellers, both sides thought day one was the moment they announced something, right? That they announced the deal, that they announced the merger, that they announced the coming together. And my philosophy was, nope, that is not day one. Your day one is from the moment you as leaders or business owners or CEOs start thinking about a merger or an acquisition. Because whether you realize it or not, your actions, your decision making is all influenced by your thinking about a merger and acquisition. So even if you don't share with anyone that you're thinking about doing a merger and acquisition, people start to pick up on your decision making, the fact that you're traveling a lot, that you're not in the office, that there's a lot of signs that people pick up on. So my focus is helping you be day one ready so that the moment you make that announcement, you are ready for all the questions you'll get. Your people are ready because people have insight on the process, and that's what I bring. Day one ready brings you insight into here's what to expect. This is how people react. Here are all the ways that you need to be prepared as a leader to help your people navigate the change that's going to happen.
So the people who come to you are the acquirers.
It's been both sides. I have worked with acquirers, acquirees. I've worked with private equity who acquire companies, to create a portfolio. Mm-hmm. It really has run, it's run the gamut. It's been a variety of clients, which actually is encouraging to me because that says both sides recognize the importance of what I do.
Right. So, somebody who's got, starting to consider buying and selling a company, they go to you. They just right at the beginning.
They do.
Because this is, we're in two businesses. I have this podcast and Today's Machining World, our web publication, but also, I'm a machinery dealer. And one of the main things we've been getting into, the new stuff is mergers and acquisitions. We call ourselves consultants. It's more convenient that way, I think.
Yeah, I understand.
So, yeah, one of the challenges that we've had is getting the people's minds in the right place. The people who are going to be acquired. That's a big challenge. So
it's the number one challenge in my view, obviously. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. It's It's the human capital. It's the people challenges. I hate the word human capital. It
Right.
reduces people to inventory as if they're assets. It's the people challenges, human nature.
But the
People,
people,
people.
yeah, and the people who are going to be leaving too, and they want
Hmm.
to, yeah, they start out thinking, I want, it's really important for all my employees to stay. And then, you know, then things change and they go, well, fine, the choir wants to move it. And people have, it seems like as the process goes on, people's minds evolve and, you know, potentially a company like Graff Pinkert, I suppose, could come to you to, in a way, partner as far as helping these people who are trying to decide whether they want to sell or not. Is that one of the things you do too? Like kind of
I
help them with the
don't,
soul searching?
I don't help them with the decision making. What I do as a CEO whisperer, as I've been called, is really help them think through what they're looking for, what will be the potential positives and challenges of the deal. What is the reason they're pursuing it? How are they thinking about it? But I am not an advisor on, how to value their business, what the
Mm.
valuation should be, who to partner with. I really talk to them about, you are about to pursue a merger or an acquisition. Here are all the ways that you need to prepare yourself, your leadership, and then your workforce for what to expect. I want to try and give every M&A deal the best chance for success. And so I give them insights into what are traditionally the biggest challenges that leaders face related to people. It's because those are the challenges not only that I experienced, but when I wrote my book, I interviewed 60 plus CEOs, CFOs, and these are Fortune 500, but also small and middle-sized business owners and executives. And consistently, they shared the same challenges that they had with people in terms of
Sure.
how people react to change.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're encountering it like, when do you tell the people that it's, I mean, and then, and I know because I saw you at the PMPA conference, that we're going to get into that. Okay. Fascinating. How did you, how did you get into this? What sort of serendipity
Why the hell
occurred?
do I do this?
Why the hell do you think that you know about this? I mean, and yeah, what's your background?
So I was a chief marketing officer, VP of marketing at several multi-billion dollar companies. And I went through three separate multi-billion dollar deals. The first one that I talk about in my book is really what motivated me to write the book. Naptech was a digital map maker.
Hmm.
Now maps are ubiquitous, right? You use your map on the phone, I'm sure, probably daily. But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, maps were not ubiquitous. And so I had the privilege of working at Naptech, heading up the B2B marketing. We were acquired by Nokia in 2008 for roughly $9 billion.
Hmm.
If you know anything about that time period, Apple had just come out with an iPhone in 2007, and it completely redefined what people were looking for from a phone.
Sure.
So I won't bore you with the details of that. That's a case study for some graduate school students, but the experience of that acquisition uh, made me realize, God, there's just got to be a better way to do M&A. We were different culturally. Nokia was B2C and we were B2B, business to business.
Hmm.
Uh,
And they were
we
From Finland too. So
Correct. Yep. So you had that cultural aspect. We both came to the deal with arrogance, a lot of ego.
hmm.
And whenever I'm asked what's the one piece of advice you would give to people as they come to a deal, I say consistently, come to the deal with respect for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You have to treat this like a marriage. If you don't have respect for the other side, this is doomed to fail from the beginning. I have never seen a deal go well when both sides are either arrogant or one side's arrogant, thinking they're saving another business. It just doesn't tend to lead to a successful M&A deal. So that's really, Noah, what was my first thought about. It first just started, I was going to write a book after navigating the Nokia Navtech M&A deal.
I mean, you're just, and you were one of a ton of employees in this mix. I guess you're a very observant person, and you just started thinking about.
Well, thank you.
Well, I don't know. That's my assumption that you're like looking around. You're one of their peers.
Right. And I think here's what I would say. That first acquisition was the most difficult for me because I didn't know what to expect. Someone jokingly said to me, the book title should have been What to Expect When You're Not Expecting to Be Acquired. I had no sense of how things play out, and I couldn't find a book to help me. And you aren't sure who to trust, particularly in multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, because everyone's jockeying for position. They're jockeying for their own role. So people who you thought were allies can become enemies. People who you didn't even know that well can suddenly become allies. And I wanted to paint a picture for people of what to expect. Now, I will qualify that my experience, these were multi-billion-dollar deals. So what I've just described is not consistent with every deal. But when you are in mega corporations, you can see a side of people that you don't expect. And when I was interviewing CEOs and I showed them the 10 personalities that you were exposed to during the PMPA presentation I gave, every CEO, every CFO, every CHRO said, "Oh my gosh, I've encountered one of these personalities." And so I knew it wasn't just my experience, but
all right. So what personality are you?
The research proved out. I try to be the great unifier. That's the person in who I describe in my book, and who I'm not sure we talked about during the presentation, but they can be a great galvanizer. They can be the person who, even if you don't report to them, you look to them to see, is this deal a good thing or not? How is this going to play out? How they can be upended, or undermined, I should say, is if they aren't politically savvy, if they aren't watching out for how the strategy is shifting, if they aren't really paying attention to how the metrics for success have changed, and that can be their undoing.
Okay, very interesting. So what I wanted to cover in this interview is both the side of management, and the side of the people who are acquired, and I hope to get some tips and insight for both. One of the things that you talked about, and I is there more to the story that I've cut off, or is this a good jumping off point into?
No, I that's it. You asked what drove me to it. It was really going through those 3 deals and realizing the better way of doing M&A wasn't going to happen unless somebody, and not trying to present myself as Joan of Arc, but unless somebody started to say, this could be done better. Thankfully, I have found a lot of people.
You left Nokia, and then you chose some other place that was acquired. Interesting.
Exactly. Yep. So I went through 2 more times, and by the 3rd one, I thought, okay, I've just got to write this book. The book idea had been bouncing around in my head at that point for 3 years. So I spent 2.5 years doing research, both quantitative and qualitative, to make sure that when I
Were you still
provided,
working? Were you still working for these for the company while you were
no,
writing the book, or you started
I
your own
started it.
company?
Yeah, I started it, but it, I'm sure you've experienced this yourself with doing a podcast. In marketing, you have very little downtime. There is no downtime. When you're doing marketing, it is you know, a 365-day job.
So
And
running your own
so,
consulting firm, you had more time to write than working in
no,
marketing?
I chose after the third, acquisition, I was actually interviewing for more CMO roles and writing the book, doing the research for it. But I consistently had CEOs ask me, well, what are you doing besides the book? This is really good information. People need this. M&A deals, 70 to 90% of them fail, and that's been a
Right. That was my
consistent
next
trend
question.
line. So they said, and because people underestimate how people react to change. They expect people to pivot quickly, and that doesn't happen. And my book talks about that. So it was during those conversations with CEOs that I realized me just writing a book, getting it, working with the publisher and getting it out there it wasn't even going to be a half solution, because as they said, how are you going to get the book into the hands of the people who need it most? So that's why I launched Day1 Ready in 2018.
Well, you got to
Because
eat as well, right?
absolutely. Yes. Yes, you do.
And
Uh,
a book from what I hear, unless you're like Michael Lewis and you get a movie made out of it, it's, I mean,
yeah.
can a book, um,
Well,
can,
but I didn't write the book expecting to make money off of it. I wrote the book simply because I wanted to have a book out there that helped people to navigate mergers and acquisitions, to know what to expect.
Mhm.
But truly, after talking to CEOs who consistently said, you would make a very good consultant on this because you've been
Mm.
through it. You've been on all sides, and people, they don't know what to expect. But if they did, CEOs proposed that they thought the success rate for M&A deals would get better. And I
So does the
agree.
book bring you M&A deals? And is that
The book itself attracts the right types of leaders, forward-thinking leaders who recognize that they can't just hope, oh,
okay?
after we make the announcement, this will all work out. I'll hand it over to HR and they'll take care of the people stuff. That is not how it works. And you mentioned early on you're equally working in the M&A space, so that's not how things work. Once the
No.
deal is signed, hope is not a strategy. I didn't coin that, but it's absolutely true. So I do, as a consultant, I work with leaders and their
Oh.
teams to prepare them and then help
Yeah, that's the
their
hard part.
next
I'm
level
glad I'm
down.
not involved with that. We just kind of make the deal and go on to the next one. So we think. Why? Tell me about the 70 to 90% failure uh, stat that you were talking about in your talk. Explain that.
That is a Harvard Business Review and McKinsey,
What
research. So it's
fails?
based,
What fails 70 to 90%
it
times?
doesn't achieve its valuation by year one. So
Oh,
when
okay.
you talk about an M&A deal, right, there are certain
What about
gates that
what
need.
about Twitter though? They're gonna reach it.
Well, that that
I'll
if
ask
I
you
was a
about that
betting
later. I'll
if I
ask
was
you
a
about that
betting
later.
person, I don't think so. And there's always a myriad of reasons, but consistently when I was interviewing CEOs and CFOs, they consistently said what they saw as leading to the lack of success were unexpected people challenges,
To me,
things
to me,
that they
looking
hadn't
looking
anticipated.
looking at that from afar, honestly, I wouldn't expect things to be, gotten right in the first year. I think that's a bit unrealistic to expect it. So the 70 to 90%, I don't know. Can you really even call that failure, or is this just the right expectations?
I think it is. I think it's exactly that. But if
It's
you,
just the right
particularly
expectations, or it's
in the
failure?
multi-billion-dollar deals, right? They share it with the press. They bring a lot of attention to it based on hitting these metrics and numbers, and here's how it's going to help the business. So to your point, it is seen as a failure when they don't, but exactly as you said, it's because they set expectations at this level when
Right.
what you and I are talking about here, people don't pivot on a dime. So what tends to happen, particularly in those big deals, is you'll have leadership who's aware, frankly, they've maybe even been involved in making the deal happen for months. But
Yeah.
now you announce it and you're expecting your entire workforce to pivot and move quickly. And if you haven't involved them early on, if they haven't had any idea that this is going to happen,
Yeah.
then suddenly you're forcing people to pivot very quickly. And that just doesn't happen. Human nature, I would say
Yeah.
human nature, it's not that humans don't like change. They abhor uncertainty. And that's, again,
Oh
going back to my
God.
day one ready. Day one ready means you bring as much certainty as you can. There's a lot of things that are going to play out, variables you cannot control, but focus on what you can control. Prepare your
Certainty.
people,
My God.
have answers to questions. Again, don't hope things will just work out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, nobody wants unclarity. That I think that's a lot of what we want, right? I mean, I see it in business. Like there's an election. Whether a Democrat or Republican becomes president, people are still going to need to manufacture, right? But
Hmm.
they want clarity. They want to know,
Right.
and it's probably not even going to change that much. And they don't. It doesn't matter who becomes president. Once there's a president, they'll eventually buy stuff again. It's this whole unclarity thing that I
Right.
hate. Everybody hates. All right, I want to dig into this now, because I know you can get really into depth here. Um, and I mean, this has been a great like overview, but now, um, first, give me a few of the causes of disruption, the lack of clarity. What causes this lack of clarity? What causes people to get all crazed? And then we're going to discuss, solutions, etc.
Well, the lack of clarity, and again, this is from my point of view. It's based on my research. It's that too often key decisions and communication plans aren't developed in advance of announcing the deal. So
Mm,
in that due diligence, the focus is on the financials, it's on the
right.
transaction and the valuation, which absolutely it should be. My philosophy, my mission is to bring that people piece into the due diligence. It's why I work with a company called Virtus Partners. They are experts in due diligence from the transaction, quality of earnings, the audit, all of that. And they recognized in pursuing that the integration, preparing for that integration earlier in the process and due diligence was key to success for those deals.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
and so as part of, I just focus on the human capital aspect. But they have an integration management office, leader. Her name's Galina Wallenetz, who's equally just, amazingly talented. And to your point, right? Her whole job is to bring clarity to here's what's going to happen. Here's how we set you up for success so that each department is clear on how they need to move forward once the deal is announced and that they can get things jump started by having had the discussions earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so
But to your unasked question, the reason why
yeah,
a lot of that lack of clarity happens is people don't think about that. They wait, the deal's announced, suddenly people have questions all over the place. Do I have my job? Are there going to be layoffs? Are we keeping this department? All of these kinds of things that if that hasn't been tackled or at least discussed in advance, it creates unintentional chaos. And
right.
so
But
that's,
the problem is they can't tell the employees too soon because then everybody will freak out before the deal, right?
they can't, but they can prepare for those questions in advance.
Right. Uh, Right. That makes sense. So, okay, so one type of disruption is people or feel feeling that causes disruption is people are worried about their jobs and their department. Uh,
Absolutely.
Technology, that's another big thing, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Right.
Are you dealing with manufacturing companies a lot? Are you dealing with huge corporations? What is the size of the companies you're working with?
No, it really runs the gamut. And I'm grateful for that. I've worked with small to mid-market companies. Frankly, I love working with those companies because traditionally they don't have a human resource person who's been through multiple M&A deals.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a lawyer, right? You wouldn't pick a lawyer, a litigation lawyer to help you with employment law. The same thing, right? HR, it's a specialty in mergers and acquisitions. And if your HR person has largely been your general manager, compensation benefits, they will have insight into how to manage that. But as you and I have been talking, there's a lot that comes with how do you keep your workforce inspired, motivated, and moving forward. And so I enjoy working with small mid-market because typically they don't have that advisor on staff. And
So
so
you're not
really,
competing with somebody else who says,
no,
I know what's up.
right. And CEOs who I've worked with in the small mid-market group have said repeatedly, I'm so thankful that I found you. I wish I'd known you earlier when I did a few other deals where we didn't know what to expect. So I work in that capacity with small mid-market, but I'll equally work with Fortune 500. Express Scripts was acquired by Cigna for 64 billion back in 2018, and they had me come in and speak to their leadership because they were used to being acquirer, and now they had been acquired.
Ah,
And so the CEO, Tim Wentworth, wanted to make sure that his leadership was prepared for what to expect.
did you
So it
didn't
really,
work
it
with them
varies.
like intimately step by step. It was more like, okay, let's bring her in and let's
Yeah,
bring
it was
Jennifer in and give you this is sort of the primer and then they
right,
had other
exactly.
people come in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, typically when it's multi-billion dollar deals, you have the big four firms that are working with companies because, they're everywhere. They're
What are the
integrated
big
into
four?
everything.
What are the big four firms?
Well, you're like your Ernst and Young, your Price Waterhouse Cooper,
Oh, Goldman
those
Sachs, and they have people on staff that are doing that.
correct.
Got you.
But like I said, I've worked with companies who, even if they have them, they have me come in to help their executive leadership get really smart and crystal clear on the people challenges, how to
But
be better
maybe if it
leaders.
was a company that was like a say, you know, $10 million, they're selling for $10 million or something. I
Mhm.
mean,
Worked with that size as well.
right? Would that be somebody that you'd go and maybe like intimately consult with, or would
Yes.
it? Yeah. Okay.
Because they're what I'm trying to do is not only help the leadership know what to expect, but traditionally then they have me stay on for a month, 90 days to help their next level leaders. Because the next level leaders, frankly, it's the front line that get abused the most. And abused is not the right word, but they're the ones who feel the pressure the most because they may not have been directly involved in crafting the strategy. That's why
Mm.
I always say my book is written for the person who wasn't in the room when the deal was made, but who is burdened with the execution. And so I look to help that team of leaders be smart on not only, okay, how do you navigate this for yourself? Because it's a marathon that you are going to be on. How do you do it not only to preserve your own energy and wellness, but how do you help your teams navigate what tends to be constantly shifting strategy as people figure out what works and what doesn't?
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay. So let's let's break it down now even more. Now we're going to get into um some of the employees, when you spoke to the PMPA conference, I think you broke it into like 10 different types of people that you encounter with companies. I don't know if we're
It
going to
wasn't
break.
an exhaustive list. It's just the 10 that emerged that I saw consistently. And when I was interviewing executives, they said, "Oh yeah,
All right, let's
we've
go into some
we've
of the
seen
biggies.
these."
I don't know if we're going to go through 10, but let's go through
Ah, yeah.
some of the biggies that occur with employees, and
Well,
then what management can do and what they can do.
the ones that we shared during that PMPA presentation, I think are the big ones that we had
Okay.
some fun with. So the former rock star, that
Mm.
is the person who consistently, almost every interview I had, they talked about that person, the person who in the original company had the Midas touch. Frankly, they were probably part of building the company up, defining the company's success metrics. It could have been head of sales, head of product, head of marketing, the person who had the CEO's ear, but everyone saw them as a rock star. And the struggle that can happen that will turn them into a former rock star is once the deal is done, the metrics for success change. They just do naturally. You pursue a merger and acquisition as a growth strategy. It means that the way the business was going before isn't necessarily
Right.
what's going to get you to the next level. So you pursue this merger and
Like
acquisition to do that.
right, for like perhaps this person was quote unquote indispensable.
Yeah.
And then now, the company is trying to create something where there's some redundancy and everybody's dispensable because
Well, I think
you need
actually
you yeah.
it's not necessarily a matter of being dispensable or indispensable. It's that the metrics for success change, and often a rock star has gotten to that position because he or she had a certain way of doing things and they were successful doing it that way. When the metrics for success change, they have a difficult time
Ah,
pivoting because what made them successful now is not what's going to make them successful in this new iteration of the company. And they have a hard time letting go of the old way of doing things because that's what made them successful.
right. Maybe
So I
there's a
always
higher
highlight.
standard, or maybe there's a higher standard for efficiency or output, or
So
maybe
the
they
an
want
example
something
I can
else.
an example I can give you that I talk about in the book is a head of sales
Okay.
in a company. He was phenomenally successful selling a product a certain way. After the deal was done, they moved from product sales to solution selling. It wasn't so much about the product, but getting in with clients to be the solution service for them. And the product, the portfolio of products was part of that, but it was really a solution sale.
Hmm.
That sales leader had a very hard time pivoting because he had been so successful working with clients, promoting products and really delving into it from a product standpoint. So shifting and now trying to be a solution sales oriented sales leader was very difficult for him. And so it's just one example. You can have people who struggle in multiple ways, but that's just so I want
So
to be clear. It's not
is
just
that an
sales that
error? Is that an error that the acquirer makes, like trying to put a round peg
nope,
in a square hole, or it's not
nope,
necessarily a bad idea to shift people around?
nope. I just highlight that's an aspect of human nature that people don't anticipate. Leadership thinks, oh, everyone's going to love this. It's going to be huge growth potential for everyone without factoring in the human nature aspect of change. So the former rock star is a perfect example of, because this is when CEOs would repeatedly say to me, I thought my head of sales was going to continue to be a rock star, but he really struggled. Now, the flip side of this, though, that I think is important, because I don't want this to all be doom and gloom, new rock stars can emerge. It's why I always counsel CEOs to say, just be prepared. You may have people who you counted on who really struggle, but you will be surprised at the silent rock stars who rise to the occasion because these metrics for success they get, and it optimizes their skill set in ways that perhaps they hadn't before, or they really are now into where the company is going. It can happen for a variety of reasons, but I say to CEOs, be open to new rock stars emerging. You can't waste too much time trying to help this former rock star, stay a rock star. They're either going to or they're not. And I talk about in the book, ways to help that. And we talked about that in the presentation. But I equally say to CEOs, be open to the emergence of new rock stars.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like, have you ever read Moneyball?
I have.
It sounds like when they put Scott Hatterberg to first base from catcher.
Yes.
And he was like, I don't want, I don't know how to play first base. I'm a catcher. And they're like, well, you get on base and this is what we want you for. And sure enough, it worked.
Yep, absolutely. Oh yeah, I've read a number of Michael Lewis's books.
Yeah.
But with the rock star, because you said, so how do you help? The number one piece of advice I highlight to CEOs is you can't coddle a rock star, right? Because then he or she tends to keep things as the old way of doing things. You want change. You pursued this deal for growth strategy purposes, so you can't coddle them. Acknowledge the really important role that they played in helping get the business to where it is. He or she may feel, I made this company. I helped this company even be considered, a company worthy of an M&A deal.
Right.
But then after that, you've got to role model the behavior that shows, listen, we've got new metrics now that we got to work towards. You were incredibly important to the company to get us here, but now you've got to pivot in order to take us to the next level.
But the management has to make sure that they don't screw it up and have him leave. Or maybe they don't care if he leaves, but
after a certain point,
or she, leaves.
He or she can become toxic. And so that's why I say you can't coddle that person. They're either going to pivot or they aren't. There's only so much you can do. I've given you examples of how to help them, but after a certain point, if you let that person stay on and they continue to say, this isn't going to work, I told you so, we should have kept to doing this the way I used to do it, look at how successful we were in the past. Again, you're holding on to the past. You're holding on to past achievements. But now, post-deal, there's a lot of opportunity ahead of you. But if you're constantly, directing all your energy to how you used to do things, you won't see those opportunities moving forward. And I will absolutely confess, I know this firsthand because I did that. I held on to the past. I was the head of B2B marketing globally. I thought that was a really important role when I was at Navtech.
Okay, so you got the rock star. And then what's another one? Quiet quitter?
That was the missing in action.
That's the missing in action. Okay, explain that.
So those are the people in the company, and this tends to happen more so in the multi-billion-dollar deals. It can happen in the smaller deals as well, though. The people who hold back, they really don't contribute much. They don't volunteer and lead anything. They put in the bare minimum because they're trying to see how things are going to play out. And so the reason why in our discussion, I referenced quiet quitting is it's a lot of that same symptoms, right? Yeah. Where they actively disengage, but you may not necessarily pick up on it right away because they're there, they're physically present, but you aren't even sure what they do. And the story that I talked about in my book is you're all on this big conference call, right? Everyone's chiming in. In the case that I used, it was a Nokia Navtech conference call. And you hear, hola, Jose from Mexico City. And, Jorge from Spain. And you have people from all over the world. And then you have, yep, hi, it's Bob here. And people go, oh, wow, Bob? Bob's on the call? What does Bob do? I didn't even know Bob was still here. Like you suddenly hear his voice, but no one knows what he does. And so, and it's that person that goes under the radar. They hold on to the job, but they contribute very little because they're
Yeah.
holding back, waiting to see what happens. And this can be enormously detrimental to a deal if you have too many people who are missing in action because nobody's doing the work. So
Yeah.
that's why I talked earlier about the need to prepare for what's that org chart going to look like?
Yeah.
What will be the titles, the departments? Are people going to maintain the same compensation? Will they have their vacation days? These sound like, very basic questions, but the more you don't have answers to basic questions, the more people worry about and hold back to see what's going to happen. And the more you have people who are nervous and uncertain of their future, and they don't do their job because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Um, would you say that providing clarity for people is more important than um, paying them more?
Well, I think to me, it's not an either or situation. Compensation clearly plays a role in big and small deals. Every time I talked with CEOs, compensation always plays a part, particularly if you've got certain key talent you want to hold on to. That's why you've heard about the golden handcuffs, right? There's, hey, if
Mm.
you stay on a year, you'll get XYZ bonus because you want them to stay on, particularly because the moment recruiters hear about a deal that's happening, they're circling. It's kind of like, as I
Oh,
joked
interesting.
during the presentation, it's like chum in the ocean for sharks, right? So, recruiters are finding out, oh, okay, a deal's going on. Well, there's you typically with merger and acquisition deals, things drag on. Do you want to stay at that company? Because I got a couple of great roles where they'd love to have you, right? So I always say to CEOs, you need to be crystal clear on who your key talent is and make sure you hold on to them. But
Right.
oftentimes with talent, compensation is one small part. They want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're contributing, and they want to know what the mission is and the role that they have in it. So that's why I am always pushing for being crystal clear on what's the vision. Why are these two companies coming together? What value do both companies bring? What is that mission moving forward so that people understand the role that they can play and how they contribute?
Yeah.
If you only do the money, they may hold on just to get the money, but they can hold back from actually contributing in a big way because they don't buy into the vision or they don't understand the vision. And that's why the communications piece of post deal is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously nobody wants to have their salary decreased, but I guess from what I hear, salary is important, but for people to be happy, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so much more.
salaries important for sure. I'm not arguing that point at all. I'm simply saying that in addition
No,
to
I think
salary,
you're totally right. I think that makes total sense. Again, the clarity and the security and just feeling valued.
right.
Why don't we name one or two more? One of the two of the big ones that if somebody is acquiring that they're going to encounter.
Well, the one that I get asked about a lot, and you referenced Twitter earlier, is the
Yeah.
dominatrix. So the dominatrix is the bully. So it's and I make a point in my book, so I want to make it here that this is gender neutral. That's why in my book they're caricatures. But I had a diversity, equity, and inclusion expert. A couple of them look at my illustrations and say, some of these, they're more male oriented than female. So, you may just want to balance it out. Even though you say you're gender neutral,
Mm.
people can read into it. So that's why I made it a dominatrix. But the general personality is that person who's the bully, who is just laser focused on the objectives and getting the job done. They're not there to make friends. They aren't there to build consensus. They are there to move against the new growth strategy. Now, that personality can be enormously seductive and very beneficial early on in the deal.
You're talking
After
now.
you've
You're
announced the
talking
deal,
about. Are you talking about the head acquirer, or are you talking about a guy already or a woman already in the company that's
I've seen them on both
dominating?
sides. I've
Okay.
seen them on both sides. Um, People expect them more on the acquirer side. They've acquired. Now you just do what they say and that's it. But I've actually seen it happen on both sides. You can have people who now they've been acquired. Maybe they felt undervalued before and they see, oh, here's my opportunity. So they become a bit of a bully, right? Here's what the new regime, the new reign's going to be like, right? They embrace the new way and become a bully, within the organization. And that
And
person can be
toxic.
really, well, they can be long term. And when we talk about Elon Musk, that is absolutely his leadership style. Now, who knows how this will play out?
Yeah. So I want
We
to
may,
know. I want to know what you see here. I like we know what the media sees, and it's easy. It's easy to just go
here's what
by
I would,
our
here's what I would
instinct, but
say. At least anyone working there has eyes wide open. He does not, he doesn't hide how he leads. He's said up front, I'm hardcore. If you can't take it, then go.
mm-hmm.
When I talk about the dominatrix in the book, you may not appreciate or understand that that's that personality type until you're in it and you're thinking, oh my gosh. And that's why I say at the beginning, they're myopically focused on getting the task done. So you either can deal with that or you aren't, but they aren't there to make friends. And so, in my view, Elon Musk is absolutely that personality type. What remains to be seen is, okay, how will this play out in the short term? It looks catastrophic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In my experience, the dominatrix actually, or bully is very successful at the beginning because they're getting people, hey, change is happening. Love it or not, love it or leave it.
Yeah.
But what can happen is you lose key talent because people say, I can't put up with this. This is not the kind of boss I want to be with. My values don't align with this person. That's what you're seeing happen at Twitter. People are saying, okay, I am out of here. This is not what I signed up for. This is not the company I wanted to work for. It doesn't make either side right or wrong. Again, Elon Musk may be successful. Jury's out on that. But the comment that I make about the dominatrix that you may recall from the presentation is that person can be very helpful at the beginning, but if you have them on too long, you lose good talent. Your productivity will drop because people, if you've got the majority of your workforce operating in fear is the operative emotion, you don't get the best work from people. So they burn
Sure.
out faster. So you either leave people or you lose people or they burn out.
Right. You probably get some quiet quitters, and
Yes.
it makes me kind of think of when a new president comes in, and they have have you ever analyzed that situation? Everything just changes. Um,
No, but it is a regime change each time.
yeah, yeah. Um, what you know, what's the most difficult part of your job?
I'd say convincing the people who need to hear this message that they would benefit from it.
Yeah, yeah,
Said another way, I would say, as a marketer, I know first and foremost, when you are marketing and trying to sell something to someone, you need to find what their pain point is and present yourself as the solution for that. The problem with what I do is it's a problem no one wants to own. No one sees, a lot of the human challenges, the human capital challenges that we've talked about as their problem. So I've identified a problem and I've highlighted, hey, that 70 to 90% failure rate, a lot of that is driven by not anticipating how people react to change and overestimating how people can pivot. I can help you. I can help you solve that. But no one consistently feels they need to own that. So it's why I always emphasize I work with forward thinking
Right.
CEOs,
I
business
mean,
leaders, private equity.
the people that bring you in obviously understand that they
Exactly.
need something. But then I
Exactly.
guess there are other people that maybe are also in the
The
C-suite.
majority, the majority of people don't feel it's their problem to own. But it's why I'm thankful. I guess one of the silver linings from the pandemic, since we probably are all looking for silver linings from that, is it's heightened the importance of valuing your people, acknowledging the role that they play and supporting them
Yeah.
through change, through uncertainty. I mean, I talk about M&A as the largest, as a tsunami of change and uncertainty. And then we had the pandemic, which is the biggest change and uncertainty tsunami any of us have ever faced. But it's a great data point and reference point to say, so how did you see people react to that? You probably saw a different side of people that you never imagined. It's because everyone reacts to fear and uncertainty differently. And so I use that as my proof point. I said, even if you haven't gone through a merger and acquisition, let's just think about people you saw and how they reacted to the change that was happening and the ongoing uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we talked about it even in that PMPA session. I saw everyone almost nodding their head going, yeah, I really saw a different side of people I thought I knew who reacted differently. And so I say that only because, I think the toughest part of my job is people not wanting to own that pain point as necessarily theirs to own.
Yeah.
But that is starting to change. And
They
as you
just need
said,
to read your book and then they'd
exactly.
understand.
Yes, exactly.
Just a couple more questions I like to ask people. Um, what when you think of happiness, what do you think of?
Feeling valued. I
Yeah.
think it's why it's such a thread through the work that I do. Um, you may recall even in the keynote that I gave, in the opening, I talk about how would it feel if you had a number hanging over your head all day, right? Whether you were at home, the store, at work, people tend to tie their value to their work. And so in a merger or an acquisition, when there's so much change that happens, people lose sight of what their value is. And so my goal in the work that I do is to not only help CEOs understand that sharing a vision of where this is going and where you see the possibilities and why you pursued this deal, and then how both companies brought value to that deal, the role that both companies play, that helps people start to see, oh, okay, then here's what I do that can be valued. Here's the role that I can play. And, to your question before of how do I help companies, beyond the leadership, that's where I really work with those direct reports to say, don't tie your value to what your past achievements were. Because those were really important to now, but now your value is going to be defined by how you contribute to the future.
Do you think that people, they feel that number based on work? Do you think they shouldn't evaluate themselves as much by their work as they do?
I do, but that's human nature. So what I say is don't let other people define that number or your value. You define that number.
Ah,
The clearer you are on defining that number that's over your head, it doesn't matter. You can be in changing situations and again, I talk about it from a merger and acquisition standpoint, but the clearer you are on your value as you navigate and face new situations, they don't jar you. You aren't destabilized because you're clear on your self-worth. And that's what I really emphasize. Don't let other people define the number. You are in control of that number.
Well, I appreciate so much this interview. I really enjoyed it. I think
Thank you. Same here.
I plan on being in contact with you in the future, as a consultant, etc.
Thank you.
I think that you could be a tremendous resource for a lot of people listening to this. And so again, if they want to find you, if they want to read your book, give me another shout right now. What
You bet. So first, I would say the only platform I engage on is LinkedIn. I unfortunately, I just don't have the bandwidth for any other platform, but I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I share advice and tips through my LinkedIn posts and articles. Also on my website, which is jenniferfondrevay.com. And I can spell that JenniferJ Fondrevay, which is FONDREVAY.com. And there is where you'll find the personality test that I highlighted at the beginning of our conversation. You can answer, I think I've got 5 or 6 questions, and it'll help you see, well, who might you be working with? And it's a very tongue-in-cheek personality quiz. So, you know, does this person watch these types of movies? What would this person say, you know, at your birthday? But it's a fun way for you to maybe identify which of the personalities you're working with. And then my book, you can find the Audible paperback Kindle version on Amazon. Just put in Now What and my last name, and I will pop up.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.